My name is Riley Bennett. I'm 29 years old and I live in Spokane, Washington. I've never been the favorite in my family. Not the one who gets the praise, the attention, or the golden child status. That title has always belonged to my older brother. It was a warm summer evening at our parents' backyard BBQ, the kind of gathering where everyone pretends everything is perfect. Burgers sizzling on the grill, kids running around playing yard games, laughter filling the air. Then my brother stood up, raised his glass high, and with a loud mocking laugh that cut through the chatter, he looked straight at me and said, "Some people really need to know their place. Still single, no kids, no real responsibilities. Sometimes you just have to step aside for those who actually matter to the family." The entire yard went quiet. Every pair of eyes turned to me, waiting for the usual reaction. The embarrassed silence, the forced smile, the way I've always shrunk back before. They expected me to take it like I always had. Instead, I smiled, stood up slowly, placed my phone on the picnic table right in front of everyone, and spoke calmly, clearly, so no one could miss a word. "I just want to announce one thing. As of today, every single payment I've been making for this family stops." The smiles vanished. The laughter died. Shock rippled across their faces. My brother, his wife, my parents, everyone. That night, I locked everything down. If you want to know what happened next and how this family reacted when the money finally stopped flowing, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the story. Before everything exploded at that party, I had spent years quietly playing the role of the family's financial safety net. My older brother, Ethan Bennett, who is 34, has always been the golden child. From the time we were kids growing up in Spokane, our parents made it clear that Ethan was the one who mattered most. He was the outgoing one, the athlete, the one who brought home trophies and good grades without much effort. When he married Kayla and they had two small children, that status only grew stronger. To mom and dad, Ethan represented everything a family should be: married, stable, with kids to carry on the name. I, on the other hand, was single, focused on my career and living alone in a modest apartment downtown. In their eyes, that made me the reliable backup, the one who could step in without the burden of my own family. I started helping out financially after Ethan bought his house 5 years ago. The mortgage came to about $1,800 to $2,000 a month, and since he and Kayla were both working entry-level jobs at the time, they struggled to cover it. I offered to cover the difference, telling myself it was just temporary. It never felt temporary. Every month the payment came out of my account automatically. Then came the kids' activities. Sports leagues and summer camps weren't cheap. Soccer, basketball, swimming lessons, those week-long day camps during school breaks. I covered between $100 and $250 a month for those because Ethan would say, "The kids need this, Riley. You don't have any of your own, so you understand how important it is." I did it. I also picked up a portion of my parents' utilities, usually $100 to $150 a month, especially in winter when heating costs spiked in Spokane's cold months. Mom would mention how the bills were getting harder with Dad's retirement income not stretching as far, and I would transfer the money without question. At first, I convinced myself this was what family meant. Ethan had a wife and children to support, real responsibilities that I didn't have. I was single, no dependents, good salary from my job in project management at a local firm. Helping out felt like the right thing, almost noble. I pictured myself as the quiet pillar holding everything together. I skipped vacations, ate out less, saved aggressively so I could keep the support going. When Ethan got promoted and Kayla started working part-time, I expected the help to taper off. It didn't. Instead, the requests grew. More camps, new sports equipment, extra for birthday parties, even help with car repairs when their SUV needed tires. Each time the reasoning was the same: "You don't have kids, Riley. You wouldn't understand how expensive this is." Over time, something shifted inside me. The transfers kept happening, but the gratitude never came. No thank you notes, no invitations to family dinners where I wasn't expected to bring something, no acknowledgement that I was sacrificing my own financial freedom. I started noticing how conversations always circled back to what they needed next. Mom would call and casually mention a bill, knowing I would handle it. Ethan would text about the kids' registration fees, assuming the money was already on the way. I felt used, not appreciated. The more I gave, the less I felt seen. Being single wasn't a choice I regretted, but it became a label that justified why my contributions were expected, never celebrated. I never confronted them directly. I kept paying, kept quiet, and carried the weight alone. Looking back, that's what made the announcement at the party so powerful. It wasn't just about the money. It was about finally saying out loud that I existed beyond being their safety net. A few hours after the party, my phone started buzzing nonstop. I sat in my apartment with the lights off, staring at the screen as notifications piled up. The first message came from Mom. "Riley, how could you do this to us, family first? You can't just abandon everyone like that." It was followed by a voice message from Dad, his voice low and disappointed, saying the same thing in different words. "We raised you better than this. You can't walk away from your own blood." They kept coming one after another, each one heavier than the last. My parents had always framed everything in terms of family duty, and tonight that script was running full force. They weren't angry yet, just hurt, confused, convinced I had lost my mind. Then Ethan's texts arrived, short, sharp, full of rage. "You owe us for everything, everything. You think you can just cut us off because you're single and have no real life? This isn't fair." He followed with a voice note that I didn't play right away. I could already hear the tone through the preview waveform. When I finally listened, his voice cracked with fury. "You have no idea what it's like to have kids to feed, a house to keep. You sit there with your money and your freedom and think you can punish us. This is low, Riley. Really low." Kayla's messages came next, softer but sharper in their own way. She sent a photo of the kids asleep in bed, then wrote, "The kids were so excited about their summer camps. Now what? They won't get birthday gifts, no activities, nothing. Because their aunt decided to be selfish. How do I explain that to them?" She added another, "We trusted you. We thought you cared about them." Each message felt like a punch, not because they were new accusations, but because they echoed everything I had quietly accepted for years. The guilt was designed to hit hard. Family first, the kids' responsibility, abandonment. They weren't wrong about the facts. I had been the one paying. But they were wrong about why. They thought the money was theirs by right. They thought my silence meant agreement. I didn't reply. Not once. I sat there letting the phone vibrate against the table until it finally stopped, the battery low. My hands were steady as I opened the banking app. One by one, I went through the auto payments, the mortgage transfer for Ethan's house, the recurring amount for the kids' activities, the utilities contribution to Mom and Dad. I canceled them all. Then I changed my passwords, enabled two-factor authentication on everything, and logged out of any shared family accounts. It took less than 10 minutes, but it felt like severing something physical. When the screen went dark, the quiet was deafening. I expected tears, maybe anger at myself for letting it go on so long. Instead, I felt a strange calm. Not triumph, just clarity. They had never seen me as anything more than a resource. Tonight, for the first time, I refused to be that anymore. The guilt still lingered heavy in my chest, but it was mixed with something stronger, the knowledge that I had finally chosen myself. I plugged the phone in to charge, turned off notifications, and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring more calls, more messages, more attempts to pull me back. But tonight, the line was drawn. A few weeks passed, and when the money didn't come through, they shifted to something more public. The first sign came on Facebook. Mom posted one of those vague status updates that everyone in the family circle would recognize as targeted. It read something like, So sad when family lets you down. You give everything to someone, raise them, support them, and they turn their back when you need them most. Selfish doesn't even cover it. She didn't tag me, but the timing was obvious. Within hours, relatives started liking it, commenting with heart emojis and praying for you messages. I saw the notifications before I blocked her. Old aunts, cousins I barely spoke to, all piling on with the same script about gratitude and family loyalty. It stung more than I expected. These were people who had never once asked how I was doing, but suddenly they had opinions about my character. Ethan took a different approach. Late one night, a long message chain arrived from him. It started calm, but quickly escalated. "I thought we could talk like adults, Riley. But since you're ignoring us, let me be clear, you owe us. Not just the money. You owe us for years of support for being there when you weren't. You have no idea what it's like to worry about bills every month to see your kids miss out because their aunt decided she's too good for us now. This isn't who you are. Or maybe it is." He ended with a photo of the kids looking sad at the dinner table, captioned, "This is what your boundary looks like." The words were meant to hurt, and they did. Not because they were true, but because they twisted everything I had done into something ugly. The real blow came from work. One morning, my boss pulled me aside in a quiet conference room. "We received an anonymous email," she said, sliding a printout across the table. It was short and professional sounding. "Concerned community member here. Riley Bennett is involved in a serious family dispute over finances. It may affect her reliability and focus at work. Just thought HR should know." My stomach dropped. The sender had used a generic Gmail address, but the phrasing was unmistakable. It was someone who knew me well enough to sound concerned but distant. My boss was kind about it. "We don't take anonymous tips seriously unless there's evidence of misconduct," she assured me, "but I wanted you to know it's out there." I nodded, thanked her, and went back to my desk with my face burning. No one else knew, but the shame lingered all day. I spent the rest of the week fielding concerned looks from coworkers who had somehow heard whispers. No one asked directly, but the air felt different. I started eating lunch alone, avoiding small talk, burying myself in spreadsheets. The isolation was familiar, but this time it carried weight. I had spent years protecting my family from their own financial stress, and now they were willing to drag my name through the mud in public. The post on Facebook had been shared in local groups, commented on by strangers who didn't know the full story, but were quick to judge. "Ungrateful daughter," one person wrote. "Blood is thicker than water," another added. Every notification felt like a reminder of how little I had ever mattered to them beyond what I could provide. The guilt tried to creep back in, whispering that maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should just send one payment to smooth things over. But I didn't. I kept the accounts locked, kept my distance, and let the silence speak for me. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to fix their problems. And that choice, painful as it was, started to feel like freedom. The next month brought the real pressure as the consequences started to show. My parents' utilities bill came late for the first time in years. Mom called me crying, her voice shaking over the phone as she explained how the electric company had sent a warning notice. "We can't keep up without your help, Riley," she sobbed. "The house is cold at night and your father isn't sleeping well because of it." She didn't yell, she just wept, letting the silence between sobs fill in the guilt. I listened quietly, my chest tight, knowing exactly what she wanted. I didn't offer money. I said I was sorry they were struggling and ended the call. The next day, she called again. Same tears, same plea. It became a pattern every few days, another tearful message about the mounting stress, the worry that winter heating would be impossible without the extra support. Ethan and Kayla were quieter but no less direct. They stopped the kids' summer sports leagues and day camps entirely. Ethan sent a single text with a photo of the registration forms crossed out. "The boys won't be playing soccer this fall. Thanks for that." Kayla followed with a longer message about how the children were disappointed, asking if I realized what I was doing to them. The words were meant to cut deep, and they did. I pictured the boys, energetic, always excited for practices, now stuck at home while their friends continued. The image stayed with me for days, a constant ache. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I focused on moving forward. I found a new apartment on the south side of town, smaller but brighter, closer to the river. Loading my things into the car and driving across Spokane felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. The drive was quiet, just the hum of the engine and my thoughts. I unpacked alone, arranged books on shelves, hung curtains, made the space mine in a way my old place never had been. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, stayed late, volunteered for extra responsibilities. My boss noticed the shift and gave me more lead roles. The routine grounded me when everything else felt unsteady. One weekend, I drove to Riverfront Park. The paths along the Spokane River were empty early in the morning, the water calm and reflecting the sky. I started hiking there regularly. Nothing intense, just walking the trails, breathing fresh air, letting the rhythm of my steps quiet the noise in my head. The park became a refuge. I met a small group of regulars, a retired teacher who knew every trail, a young couple who brought their dog, an older man who always carried binoculars for birdwatching. We exchanged nods at first, then small talk, then invitations to join walks. They didn't know my story, and I didn't share it. Being seen as just another person on the path, not the daughter who owed money or the sister who cut off support, was healing in its simplicity. Each step on those trails loosened something inside me. The guilt still surfaced, Mom's crying voice, the photo of the crossed-out forms. But it no longer paralyzed me. I began to understand that protecting my peace wasn't selfish. It was necessary. For the first time in years, I felt the beginning of something lighter, not freedom yet, but the promise of it. Time continued to pass, and the consequences became impossible to ignore. The mortgage payments on Ethan's house fell behind by several months. Late notices arrived in the mail, followed by calls from the lender warning about potential foreclosure if things didn't improve soon. Ethan started driving for a delivery service in the evenings and on weekends, the same company that brought packages to our neighborhood. He mentioned it in a rare text, not asking for help, but stating it as fact. "I'm out until midnight most nights now. The kids barely see me." The words carried exhaustion rather than anger, and that shift hurt more than the earlier rage. I pictured him loading boxes into his car after a full day at his regular job, driving through Spokane's quiet streets while his family waited at home. The image settled heavily in my mind. My parents' health began to show the strain. Dad's blood pressure climbed dangerously high, forcing a doctor's visit and new medication. Mom told me about it in a voicemail she left before I blocked her number. Her voice thin and tired as she described the appointment, the concern in the doctor's tone, the worry about how stress was affecting them both. They started selling off pieces of furniture to cover basic expenses. The dining table they had inherited from Grandma, extra chairs from the garage, even some decorative items that had sat on shelves for decades. The house looked emptier in the photos relatives shared on social media, though I only saw them because a cousin forwarded one before I blocked her too. It was a slow dismantling, not dramatic, but steady, each piece gone representing another layer of stability slipping away. They tried to reach me in every way they could think of. Emails arrived from addresses I didn't recognize, long paragraphs pleading for understanding and promising things would change. Ethan used a friend's phone to send messages when mine was blocked, short notes that read like ultimatums disguised as concern. Kayla even created a new social media account to comment on old family photos, tagging people who might still have access to me. The attempts grew desperate. A letter mailed to my old address that my former landlord forwarded a message through a mutual acquaintance, asking if I would at least speak to the kids. Each one landed like a reminder of how thoroughly I had been woven into their lives and how violently I had torn myself out. I blocked every new number, reported the emails as spam, deleted messages without reading past the first line. The silence I created wasn't easy to maintain. There were nights when the quiet apartment felt too large, when the weight of their struggles pressed against my chest and made breathing difficult. I thought about the boys missing their sports, about Dad's doctor visits, about Mom's voice cracking on that voicemail. The guilt returned in waves, stronger than before, whispering that one payment could ease everything. But I remembered the years of unacknowledged support, the way they had taken without giving back, the public shaming that followed when I finally said no. I stayed firm. Cutting contact completely wasn't a single decision. It was a daily choice. Each blocked number, each deleted message, each ignored attempt felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I had given away without realizing it. The ache didn't disappear, but it began to dull. I no longer woke up checking for messages I knew wouldn't come. The space they left behind started to fill with other things, the rhythm of my own life, the small routines that belonged only to me. For the first time, the silence wasn't punishment. It was protection. 1 year after the party, everything had changed completely for me. The promotion came quietly in early spring. My manager called me into her office, closed the door, and offered me the senior project manager position I had been working toward for months. The raise was substantial enough to make a real difference, and the additional responsibilities felt like a natural extension of what I already loved doing. I accepted without hesitation. For the first time in years, my success belonged entirely to me. No one else's expectations, no one else's needs pulling at the edges of it. I celebrated alone that evening with takeout from my favorite place downtown, sitting on the balcony of my new apartment and watching the city lights come on across the river. I started investing more deliberately with the extra income. A financial advisor helped me set up a diversified portfolio, some in index funds, some in individual stocks. I researched carefully a portion in a high-yield savings account for emergencies. Watching the numbers grow month after month gave me a quiet sense of control I had never experienced before. Money was no longer something I gave away without thought. It was something I built for myself, brick by brick. Each deposit felt like an act of self-respect, a promise that I would never again let my worth be measured by how much I could provide for others. Spokane's summers became my favorite season in a way they never had been. I spent weekends hiking Mount Spokane, starting early to beat the crowds and catch the sunrise over the ridges. The trails were challenging enough to clear my mind, but familiar enough to feel safe. I learned to identify birds by their calls, noticed how the wildflowers changed with each elevation gain, felt the cool air shift as I climbed higher. On hotter days, I joined friends for river floats on the Spokane River, lazy drifts in inner tubes, laughter echoing off the banks. Cold drinks passed from person to person. The water was clear and refreshing, the current gentle enough that we could talk without shouting. Those afternoons stretched long and easy, filled with nothing more complicated than sunshine and conversation. I made new connections that summer. A group of us started meeting regularly for hikes and floats. People who had no history with my family, no expectations beyond showing up. There was Sarah, who worked in environmental planning and knew every trail like the back of her hand. Mike, who brought his 2 dogs and endless energy. Lena, who always packed extra snacks and good stories. We shared little about our pasts at first, but over time the conversations deepened naturally. They saw me as I was now, someone who loved the outdoors, who listened carefully, who showed up consistently. Being known for those things instead of what I could give, financially felt like breathing fresh air after years underwater. The guilt that had once lived in my chest like a second heartbeat began to fade. It didn't disappear overnight. There were still moments when a familiar number appeared on my phone, or a memory surfaced unexpectedly. But those moments grew shorter, less intense. I no longer woke up wondering if I had made the wrong choice. I no longer felt the need to justify my boundaries. The weight I had carried for so long, The responsibility of keeping everyone afloat was gone, and in its place was something lighter: the freedom to decide what mattered to me. I still thought about my family sometimes. I wondered how they were managing, if the boys had found new activities, if Dad's blood pressure had stabilized. But the thoughts no longer carried the same ache. They were distant, like memories of a different life. I had chosen to step away, and that choice had opened space for a life that finally felt like my own. 1 year later, I stood on a trail high above the city, the wind cool against my skin, and realized I was exactly where I was meant to be. Looking back now, I know the decision was right. My family still struggles. They try to get by on their own, but the tension never really lifts. Ethan works longer hours to keep up with the mortgage, and the kids have fewer opportunities than before. Mom and Dad manage day by day, but the stress shows in their health and in the way they speak when relatives mention me. They don't reach out anymore. The silence between us has become permanent. No calls, no messages, no attempts to bridge the gap. I haven't heard from any of them in months, and I haven't tried to contact them either. There is no reconciliation, no tearful reunion, no forgiveness offered or asked for. What we had, whatever version of family we once shared, ended the night I walked away from that picnic table. I don't regret it. The guilt that used to wake me up in the middle of the night has faded to a quiet echo. It doesn't disappear completely, but it no longer controls me. I have learned that love and obligation are not the same thing. I gave for years because I thought it was what family required. I thought my worth was tied to how much I could provide. I was wrong. Setting boundaries isn't abandonment, it's survival. It's choosing to stop pouring from an empty cup so that I can finally fill my own. I am the one who decides my value now. Not my parents' expectations, not Ethan's needs, not the role society assigned to the single daughter without children. I build my legacy one choice at a time. Through the work I do, the people I surround myself with, the peace I protect. I don't need their approval to know I matter. I don't need their forgiveness to move forward. This life with its simple routines and hard-won freedoms belongs to me alone. This story isn't about winning or losing. It's about recognizing when enough is enough. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt trapped by the weight of other people's expectations, know that you have the right to step away. You don't owe anyone your entire self. You don't have to keep giving when it costs you your peace. Boundaries aren't cruel. They are necessary. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for everyone, including yourself, is to stop carrying what was never yours to hold forever. Thank you for staying with me until the end. It means more than you know that you listened to this story. If any part of it resonated with you, if you've walked a similar path, or are still figuring out your own, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're choosing yourself these days. Your experiences remind me that we're not alone in this.